Welcome back to the No Boring Stories podcast. I am Alex Street, and I am joined today by Rebekah Chamberlain, and we are going to get deep into a really, really good story here, I am sure, and get to know you really well. Becca, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fantastic. So few people actually ask that, it's just
Really?
you bounce it right back. Look at that.
Well, I
Fabulous.
really appreciate you having me.
It's this is going to be a joy, I'm sure, to get to know you and why you do what you do. And I know a little bit about your story at this point, really kind of surface level, and it's the kind of surface level that you go, holy crap, at. So yeah, we're going to go into it. But first, I asked you just before we came on, what's one of your favorite stories? And you said what?
One of my favorite stories is the end of the Battle of Gettysburg. And how it goes is the Union soldiers were at the top of a hill in Gettysburg, and they had been fighting all day against the Confederates. General Chamberlain was guiding these soldiers, and they were out of ammunition. Most of their soldiers had been killed. They literally had a handful of soldiers left, and they realized the Confederates were charging up the hill again, and they should have retreated. That was the only logical move for them to make. But the whole Battle of Gettysburg. General Chamberlain told his men to fix their bayonets and to charge. And they charged with a handful of people, no ammunition, and they won the Battle of Gettysburg because the Confederates retreated at that point and felt that they had gotten way more soldiers and there was no way they could win. And that propelled the history of our nation, because a teacher from Virginia volunteered in the Union Army and had the courage to charge at just the moment he needed to and lead his men into victory. And if you want to know why that's my favorite story,
is there a relation to General Chamberlain?
There's no relation to General Chamberlain, but I have always admired his courage and how he changed the world with one decision. And there was a season in my life where I had the chance to change my name, and I did. I changed it to Chamberlain because that's the kind of legacy I want to leave.
You just picked.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun. You could have picked anything. You could have picked like Maximus. You could have picked like banana. Of course, you wouldn't pick those ones because those are ridiculous, Alex. You picked Chamberlain because it had meaning. I've never heard somebody have that opportunity, and like you could pick.
I know, right?
I pick. Goodness, wow.
A clean slate.
Wow. Okay, so now there is a relation. You can just say, sure, yeah. He's my homeboy. One decision. It's so interesting to think of that moment. And this is a situation we're up against where we have the advantage on the like as far as the footing goes, we're on the hill, but we don't have numbers. What kind of courage does that require of somebody to make a decision to say, well, we might as well try, and we're going to try with everything that we have.
Yep.
And then also the people, like it's the conviction as well, right? It's the conviction of the people running to say, here I go, to sound like 30 men when you're only 3, right? It's I don't know how,
it's insane. I don't know how they did it.
Well, that's interesting because I don't think that I've ever heard in the many episodes of the podcast that exists at this point, right? Usually we go to something like it's someone's favorite childhood storybook, or it's their favorite movie, or it's their favorite book. And for you to come out with this, this is like, it's history. This is what it is. Why does, like, are you like a history buff? as it is? Like, are you into that,
I would
the
say
whole picture?
borderline. It always history inspires me
Tell me more
because
about that.
history repeats itself. So you can go back and learn from situations that happened long before you were here and figure out a solution for the situation that you're in. And it lends a perspective that nothing else lends to us. It makes the problem seem so much smaller.
So like, this is what's fascinating to me, is that there's no difference between, or, I mean, tell me the difference between the story of Gettysburg that you just told me and, let's say, I can't think of now a fictional war movie, because they're all mostly based off of some sort of history, but
Right.
a fictional story of a war hero doing that, and they're both going to inspire and move us. What is it about the fact that this one actually happened that
Ooh,
sparks your
that's a
interest?
question. What it is I've always been inspired by other people's stories, because if General Chamberlain could have that courage in that moment,
Yeah.
why can't I? So it's always, for me, when there's a realness to it, it lends to me the courage I need to make the next best move, or the inspiration I need, or the hope that I need. It's no longer just a story, it's reality, and it can be mine and it can be yours.
Ooh, something just triggered when you said just a story for me. It's like, what do you mean just a story? What do you mean? Because
Ooh,
because the
yeah.
power, you're right. I totally hear that, right? There's something about it, but I also feel like there's a different connection happening there that is really interesting for you to specifically be drawn to something that is rooted in reality. This actually happened. This was a moment in our society where a human just like me was faced with adversity just like me, and made a choice that is now written about and taught about, 100 centuries later. And you are attached to that. And I go, yeah, that's great. And also, I find the same connection from Harry Potter. Like, that's right.
That's
so it's
so
like,
interesting.
when you hear, and I see myself in that character, and I think if he can do it, this is what I like. I'm questioning. I'm trying to work this out right now. Do I really put the same weight on the fictional characters that I've fallen in love with and have been moved by and constantly inspired by throughout my life? Frodo, Luke, anybody, as much as a figure in history, whether it be at the last decade or 200 years or 2000 years.
So do you?
I ask the questions here. I think I just lean more towards it. I don't know if it's a weight thing. I'm far more interested in the fact that this world was created, like that somebody could create a world, call it the Wizarding World of Harry Potter or Middle Earth or whatever, Star Wars. That's fascinating to me, that somebody made this up, and that the stories they're telling are inspired by their examples that they saw. And yet, as much as that, I don't know. Yeah, you then look at this, people who can retell history, I think are incredibly gifted. You look at, Lin-Manuel Miranda and Hamilton, like that draws us in. Why? Because he's telling a story of real events in a kind of fictional way that makes us go, whoa, if he could do it. Well, I just sort of took this on on my own direction here. So let's go in to see, why do you need courage so much in your life? And I think the way that we will unpack that is to hear your story, Becca, and to really understand who you are and what you do now, and why you do it. So let's go there. Let's start here.
Okay.
As we are here in January recording this. What do you do, and what's the impact that you're seeing it make or hoping to see it make?
I am a resilience coach, and the impact that I see it make and hope to continue to see it make and grow is helping people go from feeling stuck or in the middle of a difficult situation or wanting to get up to experiencing the freedom and the purpose that they're here to live this life in. And why I do that is because resilience is extremely important to me, and a lesson that I learned sort of the hard way. I grew up in a religious cult.
Okay, hold on. Whoa. Let's stop right there. Teaser. This is great. We'll go there because I want to direct us through the story a little bit. But okay. I love this piece about resilience coach. Maybe not something that a lot of people hear, and helping people go from stuck to feeling, the freedom of their life that they know is possible. And you talked earlier about this word courage, as well as having the courage to make those decisions. So I think all of that's going to come up, and I'm excited to see where and why those are highlighted. What, how does that work? It's just conversations with people. You get into their story, you help them make the decisions. Like, is it more about making peace with your life or setting goals for the future? How does one develop resilience now?
Well, one develops resilience by, for one, it's a decision. It's a decision to either blame circumstances or people or something outside of yourself for the life that you're living, or choosing to take ownership of the circumstances and make it into what you want your life to be. And resilience sounds like this big old warrior word and this massive decision and, these huge life-changing events that you need to, make. But it's really about the small actions that we take every day. It's about how self-aware we are and how in tune we are with ourselves, with our gifts, with our beliefs, with our priorities. It's about choosing mindfulness over reacting every single day. It's about self-care. And I'm not talking about bubble baths and, all of the hype that we see, but truly taking care of yourself, whether that's drinking enough water, getting enough sleep, like showing yourself how much value that whatever value you place on it, and allow that to continue to increase. It's about building really strong relationships, and it doesn't have to be 10,000 relationships. It's one or two good positive relationships in your life, and all of that leads you to confidence and finding your purpose. And when you have those things in place and you have little guideposts every day that are helping you stay in that space and continue to grow in that, you can live out your purpose. And that's what keeps you going. It's about bending without breaking, being able to handle more adversity than the next person or than you could a year ago. There's situations in our lives that, for me personally, and almost everybody in the universe, that we can't change. There are things outside of our control, and that can either cripple us, or we can choose to allow that thing to stay there and grow to be bigger and bigger and bigger to handle it even better. And that's what resilience is. Wow. And that's what I help my clients do, is build that muscle.
It's so interesting that the word resilience, to me, it again, kind of going visually, it almost comes down to a moment. I feel like it's this idea of getting back up.
Yeah.
It's the army that says we're not going that way. We're running towards it. We're running towards the fight. Like, we're not going to say, oh no, we don't have enough people. We're going, like, and it's this moment of you're resilient. You decide to try again, to go again. And what you're talking about is it's a moment that sounds like it's a moment that happens many times
Yes.
to build up this muscle,
Mm-hmm.
this ability to
Mm-hmm.
be resilient.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So yeah, what else?
We'll always link it back to running or, any kind of physical exercise. You don't just wake up one day and decide, yeah, I'm going to run a marathon, or I'm going to take the world on my shoulders, right? You have to start somewhere. And it's about the consistency and the little improvements and the little things that you can do day in and day out to achieve the goal at the end of it, which is to
Mm-hmm.
be able to get through hard times, to be able to not react, to be able to find that glimmer of hope when you need it and keep going.
Are you a runner?
Yes.
Yeah. And have you done a marathon?
Yeah. I've done 3 or 4.
Oh, come on. Uh, what what is that actually? At what point in the marathon do you feel like quitting the most?
Mile 18 every time.
For real?
For real.
Yeah.
For real. Yeah. That's when it starts to hurt.
For how long? Like for that mile? You're like, here it is for 8 minutes. This is gonna be pain, and then all of a sudden it shifts.
It's all about how long you decide. It's because your brain is so powerful. It's all about what you focus on. Like if you want to think about the pain, you could let it hurt from mile 18 to mile 26. But if you choose to push through the wall and the mental block, you rise above it and you don't notice it anymore. And I think that's why I love running, because it's such a picture for our lives. Whatever the struggle is that we're head on facing, trying to work through, you can choose to rise above it, and you can choose to grow beyond that circumstance and find the tools you need to deal with it every single day and to get past it or through it or over it or live with it. Sometimes circumstances aren't changeable. And the running has taught me that. And we're extremely powerful. We're the only ones that stand in our way to not have these gifts in our lives.
So even in that, again, I know we're going to get into your story, but I love looking at this and hearing your perspective on this, because even when you're in that, you're at mile 18, you're like, yeah, but just choose to rise above it. What kind of get as specific as you can. What kind of thoughts go through your head either way? There's a thought of this sucks, this is pain, my legs are sore, I'm not sure I can do this, it hurts to breathe, any of those negative thoughts. But then what is or just any of those thoughts, let's not even label them. And then what's the other side? How do you just choose to overcome those? What kind of thoughts replace them?
The thoughts that replace them are always the vision of where you're going, right? And I think that's true in life, and that's true in races as well. The negative thoughts are always, can I do this? It's always self-doubt for me. Am I really capable of this? Did I really train hard enough? Am I really going to make it? And it's just self-sabotaging, which is, I don't know, something that I deal with in real life, not just in running. But I combat that with, I can always see and feel what it's going to be like at the finish line. And the beautiful thing about marathons is you're never the same person at the end as when you started. Never. It's such a great way to hijack your growth, because you can't cross the finish line as the person who started it, because there's so much that happens in that 26 miles in between. So it's always that vision of the finish line is what keeps me going, and what I know it'll feel like, and that I'm capable of that if I choose to be. It's up to me.
So that's critical right there. Everything. So you're in this place of struggle and self-sabotage, asking that key question, can I really do this? They say in storytelling, there's the dramatic question, which is what every character goes through, which is asking the question, who am I? And going through this experience, trying to define that. You're saying, and at the beginning, they're one person, at the end of simply this race, give them 4 hours and watch how they change. or 6 or maybe 12 for me. But uh, asking that question all the way through, who am I? I can do this. I can do this. I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Can I do this?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, the only way that I can do this, overcome this pain, is to see the goal and move towards it.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you've always had that ability to see the vision, see what's ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now let's go back. Now you dropped this bomb earlier. You said I grew up in a religious cult. Okay, so here you are. So well, that's the context for also this idea, though, of resilience, of courage, of freedom, of vision. I want to know how that plays out within that context. Where does that first begin to show up? This idea of resilience, of courage, where does that first begin to show up for you within that environment? Take us there.
Going back to my childhood, I just always had a knowing that I was here for a reason. And that's the best way I can describe it. It was never this grand plan of exactly what it would be. It was just knowing I had a purpose and something great that I needed to fulfill with my life.
Were
And
people telling you that, or like instilling that in you?
No, what was instilled in me was, you're a woman and this is the role of a woman inside of this belief system that you're required to be a part of. You clean the house and you make the food, and until the day we find a husband for you, you stay home and you're a helpmeet to your father. You pay the bills, you like do all of the household things, and you do never put yourself under the authority of another man. You will never have a job. You'll never be out in the world alone without the protection of your father, even driving somewhere, going anywhere, staying anywhere. Like, you will be under that protection at all times. And I remember clearly during, especially my teenage years, obviously our belief system included the Bible, and there's a proverb that says, and it's very true, without a vision, the people perish. And I remember so many times telling my dad, like, what's the point of all of this? You want me to be happy and you want me to be content, but there's no end game. Like, what's the point? I'm not going to be happy or content because I don't have a purpose. I don't have a vision.
So
I lost it.
When you show up like that in an environment like that, and you are, as a teenager, I mean, teenagers are asking questions, they're pushing boundaries all the time in any normal environment, but in that space, you start to push boundaries like that, push questions. Is it shut down immediately, or was it? Is there ever the ability to explore that with other people, or are you left on your own to say, like, okay, well, what am I here for? What is my meaning? What is my vision?
No, outside counsel or resources or mentorship was not available. And that was all part of the game, part of the cult. It was all about, having complete control of what was put into our minds. And where that took me was down a really dark road. I was extremely unhappy. I had an older brother and we were really close. And then he was a man. So he moved off and went to school when he was 18, and I was only 18 months younger than him. And I was left alone with nobody. And it manifested for me in making all of my dreams into fears so that it didn't hurt so bad to not be able to live them out. And I also didn't even know what an eating disorder was, but definitely leaned into controlling my food intake because that was something that I could control, and that somehow felt good and satisfying.
Tell me, okay, you said something so good there. I turned my dreams into fears. Do you talk about that a lot?
I have been, yes.
Yeah. You need to talk about that here a lot more. What does that mean? You are at this place of aloneness, and the only way to feel okay about it is to turn your dreams into fears. Again, get as specific, idea focused as possible. What does that mean?
So what that means is the pain of all of those dreams not even feeling as if they were possible in any way, feeling as if they were all stripped away from me. The pain of that was unbearable to the point that I chose to be fearful of the things that I dreamed of, because somehow that was easier to handle.
What kind of things were you dreaming
Dreaming of going to college, dreaming
of?
of traveling the world, dreaming of nursing and speaking and making a difference. It was always surrounded by making a positive difference in the world.
And at that point, again, growing up in this environment where everything's fed to you, everything's told to
Mhm.
you, you're told how to think, what to do, what to wear,
Mhm.
everything, who you're going to
Mhm.
be and what your future is going to be like. That ability to see beyond that box or that bubble, to see that vision and even have those dreams,
Mhm.
that to me seems like a rebellion in its own
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Like if that, again, you say as early as you can remember, you knew that you were here to make a difference, to do something else. There's this, like, again, within the environment, that is a rebellious
Mhm.
idea. In
Mhm.
any other setting, that's like, yeah, girl, like,
Yeah,
come
go
on.
for it. Mhm.
Yes, let's go, girl power. Like,
Mhm.
you're gonna rule the world.
Mhm.
You got this, baby. Like,
Mhm.
just think of talking to my own kids like that. That's,
Yeah.
yeah, they say something like
Yeah.
that, I'm like, let's go.
Yep.
But in your environment, again, just there's no room for it.
No, absolutely none.
So when you think of making a positive impact, again, what, like, specifically, do you remember what that
Mhm.
might have looked like? Positivity.
One of the biggest aspirations I had at the time was to get my nursing degree and travel around the world and help children that didn't have the medical help that they needed.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, okay. So again, right, we're just getting this massive, like, picture of how big your heart is, and
Mhm.
um how it's
And
bigger than
then,
the container you were in.
yeah. And then I kept trying to shrink it down. So
Right.
then inside of that container, it was, well, I'm really good at playing the piano, which I was at that time very good at it. And I could maybe find a husband who led a church and, contribute music that could move people and make a difference. And it would be kosher and okay and something that I could do.
Yeah.
Now I can't picture that.
So right, so that's these dreams that you have of going around the world, getting your nursing, impacting the
Mhm.
world, speaking, being on a
Mhm.
stage, whatever,
Mhm.
like having this massive impact. You turn into fears, and those fears then look like, oh, that's like,
Yeah.
I couldn't do that, I can't do that, that's too far from me. What
So
does fear sound like?
the fears look like legitimate fears. Like, oh, instead of finding joy in traveling, I'm going to be fearful of stepping on an airplane or stepping anything outside of my comfort zone because it's not available to me. So the actual steps I would need to take to achieve these dreams, I turned into crippling fears. I can't go drive to college by myself, so I'm going to be fearful of driving. I can't go to college, so I'm going to start questioning my academic ability. All of those things, like legitimate fears of living.
This, I think you just tapped into something that so many people are going to say, you're kidding, you too, like, or you just defined something for somebody listening
Mhm.
that they have been unable to put their finger on.
Mhm.
This thing that you are so frustrated with, why you cannot seem to get to this place or do this thing, might just be because you have created a fear out of
Mhm.
your dream, out of what is meant
Mhm.
to be a dream.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you I mean, maybe you take us through this, but as you keep going, I want to know how that shifts, how that changes, and how does that come back to the place where now you are able to see, wow, that is a dream. And I'm stepping into this dream now. So,
Yeah.
from there you are 17 years old, turning dreams into fears.
Yeah.
To now something happens between that.
Yeah.
Bring us on the ride.
All right. So it's in a dark place, just like we talked about, and turned all of my dreams into fears and surrendered myself to what was, to the future that was meant for me. And at that time, I chose surrender because I had bought into the dialogue that I needed to live inside of the walls of the box built around me in order to please God and in order to not be disowned by my family. And values have always been important to me. I will sacrifice anything for what I believe in. And that's still true to this day. My beliefs have shifted, but it's still true to this day. And so when I was 19 years old, still extremely unhappy and just dissatisfied with life, my dad brought someone for me to marry. And it was arranged. It was sort of posed as, do you want to marry this person or not? But we did go ahead with the courtship, which was 3 months long. We got engaged and we got married when I was 20 years old. And
were you like living on like a commune or something, or was it
at
what I mean? Like
at that time when we got married, we were not. From the ages of about 10 to 16, we were.
Okay.
Yep. So go ahead.
Okay, no, that's it. I was just trying to picture the setting, again, the environment, whatnot. So okay, so you get set up with this arranged marriage at 20.
Yep. We got married, and he was a dairy farmer. So I moved hours away from my family, to the middle of nowhere on a dairy farm, and we lived our lives. We had 3 kids. Besides the 3 kids, I don't have anything positive to say or to share. It was very, very difficult. And it was a season that I gave away every ounce of dignity I've ever had in every facet of my life. It was all about working to keep things going. All of that was on my shoulders. And living inside of the box of what somebody else needed or wanted every moment of every single day, on top of raising a family.
That person being your husband.
Yes.
Which, right? So it's like, of course, that's how you're living. Of course, because that's what you've been taught.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, again, at the risk of sounding naive or asking a stupid question, not that there is such a thing. Growing up thinking I want to do more, were you receiving those sorts of teachings of like, yeah, well, you're going to grow up and you're going to get married and you're going to serve your husband and your family?
Yeah.
Were you receiving that? Were you believing it? Were you like that becomes part, or were you resisting it?
I would say it never felt right.
Yeah.
So I always resisted it, but I felt like that I believed that part of me that didn't feel like it was right. I didn't have any trust in myself. So that must have been the devil or something outside of me that was making me question something that was wrong. So, here I am with 3 children in the most miserable state I've ever been in, begging God to give me contentment because there's something wrong with me, right? I should be content. I should be all of these things inside of a situation that no human should ever have to live inside of. And I'm begging for somehow acceptance to be okay with it.
Acceptance. Was there anybody that you could trust, that you could speak to? Anybody? Again, that wasn't possible when you were growing up, but at this point, there's nobody that you can kind of say, is this right?
No, towards the end, there started to be a few people in my life that I started to run things past. And that's really what sparked for me, like that, oh, this really isn't right. This isn't right. And two, I just started doing my own research and Googling things to figure out, like, well, I've heard this concept of cycles of abuse. I wonder what that really is. And then when I read about it, I just saw my life like flash in front of me. And I was like, oh, that's why I don't, that's that feeling inside of me, is because this isn't right.
How old were you at around that point?
28.
So all these years, like this what's, I don't know, shocking maybe, but it's not shocking. It's just, this is it, is you're 28 years old and coming to this point, and now I'm going to Google, like, is this okay? You can just imagine, again, I'm getting this real visual of like you sitting at the computer, and you say,
yep.
Take us into that moment where you alone, where it was like kids are asleep, he's out, I'm on the computer, like reading until so you can, as much as you can.
Yeah. So the moment came in bits and pieces. We ended up, my ex-husband and I met another gentleman who had been part of the cult my family was in. And it was interesting because our paths had crossed as children, but we didn't realize it at the time until we met as adults. And we went out together for dinner a couple times as couples. And he just said enough things, because he was no longer living inside of any of it, that really sparked a lot of questions inside of my head. And so then that's when I started Googling and really researching what was happening in my own life to figure out what I wanted to do next.
Which then leads to, then you're faced with it. This is the Chamberlain moment. Look, this is the situation I'm in. It is not good.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yep. So I was faced with reality of what was going on was wrong. And it wasn't no longer my opinion, right? What I felt inside of me, I had proof outside of me, because I didn't trust myself at that time. So I decided, well, it's still the right thing to stay married. Getting divorced is still, to me, wasn't an option at that time. So I asked if we could start marital counseling. And that just made something that was horrible into triple horrible. It just, it went from, it was like a train into hell. And I guess for me, it just confirmed that there was nothing more I could do to salvage the relationship, and it was time to move on.
It's also what I just heard there. Like, I don't know the situation. We don't know the details of what that looked like in the home and any of that. But what it sounds like to me is there's this, like, it's a train right into hell, is a description of what happened or how you felt as you had no agency of your own. You had no identity of your own. And in that feeling, it was the worst. Like, no human should ever go through this. So it's just, then again, bringing in whatever abuse there was and everything in there that without the details, then I just think that what I'm drawing attention to here is the lack of identity, the lack of agency, the lack of independence is such a despairing place to be, that we have to find a way out of that. You can't survive in that. And so for you to make that decision to say, I'm going to charge, here we go. How do you possibly do that when this is the only life that you've known? And what's going to catch me? Is there a net that's going to catch you? Like, how do you make a call like that?
I think when you get into those moments that you have to make a decision and there's no uncertainty either way, what happens inside of us is the discomfort of staying stuck with, how you said it, no agency, whatever the situation is, whether it's a job, a relationship, a lifestyle. The pain of staying stuck outgrows the fear of what's going to catch you. And there's a point that pendulum swings and there's no going back. There just isn't. And that's what drove me. I couldn't do it anymore. And what broke the camel's back was listening to me talk to my girls and teach them passionately what I believed for them. You can go and do and be anything that you want to be. You deserve to feel loved and to belong. You should be teaching them how to be confident, and then looking at the mirror and saying, you fucking hypocrite.
Yeah.
You're a hypocrite. And how do you ever expect to lead a new generation of children if you can't make the decisions you need to make for yourself? Are you going to break the cycle, or are you going to let it continue?
So, oh man, it just comes back to this, like you said, it was the pain of being stuck became greater than the fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if we can bring it back to even this idea of dreams and fears. And was it pain, or was it these dreams were showing up again?
Yeah.
Again, like in a conversation, like that's what I just heard there, is when you're talking to your girls, you're telling them something that you're realizing, this is what I used to believe about myself, or like this has shown up in my life time and time again. Where did that go? You hypocrite. You're not living the life that not only you're telling them to live, but you knew that you could live.
Yeah.
And it's almost like this, like a reawakening.
Yeah. I think it's discomfort of staying stuck. I don't think it is a pain. You're right. It's like this discomfort of playing small. It's the discomfort of really letting yourself down. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody around you.
Yep. I mean, which is amplified when you've got people that you're investing into, kids, that now it's not just you, but it's, that you are a role model for them. So how do you show up and I'm letting myself down, but this is for them.
Yeah.
So, this is good stuff. So you are, I mean, how far removed from that are we now?
Oh, it's a distant memory. It's like, I'm so far removed that when I look back on it, it's like, it's an outside view of what actually happened.
Yeah. So how do you start it? Did it feel like building something completely new, building a life completely new as you leave, as you is there a declaration? Is there an announcement made to everybody? Is it a company email that says Becca's out? Like, what's
It was the getting out process was the hardest thing I've ever been through.
Right.
There were many, many, many threats in the process of us dividing our home, to the point that when I left, I lied about where I was going and just never went back when the kids and I left. And so that season was really difficult. There are many beautiful lessons through it, but it did not feel like a declaration of a new life. It felt like a death sentence, to be quite honest. When we went into the courtroom for our divorce hearing, when I walked into that room, every one of our close friends was sitting there with him. And that wasn't something that I expected, to lose my support system in the midst of the most difficult time of my life.
Yeah.
But looking back, it really taught me so much about boundaries and about having healthy relationships. And it opened up space for some really great people to walk into my life and to build a really beautiful future. Um, and I think the most pivotal moment in that time for me was waking up one day, and guys, there's such a grieving process that comes with divorce, whether it was a dramatic one like my
Mm-hmm.
story tends to be, or one where it was just a decision that was best for both of you. But there was a whole year that it was just really sad. I had dreamt of a family and I wanted that to be part of my future, and I didn't see how that could ever be now. We were so broken and so on different pages, and it just felt like conflict after conflict. And everything I put my fingers on, it felt like was undermined and destroyed. And I really got into a pretty sad mindset of a lot of anger and blame. And I really felt like a victim of my past. And I didn't see any way that I could get out of it. You know, the ways that I showed up didn't work in the real world. I couldn't show up with the self-protecting habits that I had and have the life and build the life that I wanted to have. And one day I was painting the hallway of my home and listening to a book, and it was that light bulb moment of taking ownership for what I wanted to build for my future. And that changed the trajectory of our lives into something now that I dreamt of as a little girl. The life I have now is what I dreamt of. And I'm so grateful for that. And resilience is what has gotten me here.
Okay.
Yeah, unpack that, please.
Wow. What book were you listening to?
It was called Extreme Ownership.
There we go. So, of course, the word ownership comes out of
and
that.
It was
and that just
another
stuck
military story.
Mm-hmm. The way that you just summarized that really felt like the last chapter in a book, and also a to be continued of the life that I have now is the one that I dreamed of when I was a little girl. Like, what 30 minutes ago we began this story with, where does this idea show up first in your life? You're like, I always knew, even as a kid, that I was meant for something more, and here you are now saying, yeah, that loop is closing and opening at the same time to something new.
Absolutely. Yes.
There's a few words that came up for me as well around this story of, like, the from and to. You said from stuck to freedom. At first, I heard this like almost like resistance. Again, whether it's from you or it's towards you, like because you were like resisting the system to a degree, but then you were told to no, you can't do that. So there's like this, you are a force that is constantly meeting resistance.
Yep.
And trying to be contained for so much of your life. And then you get to this point where you realize, thanks to a Google word search, as it were, this isn't right. And I don't need, the good news is it doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
I think that's the good news for any of us stuck in any situation. Absolutely. Is it doesn't have to be like this.
Yeah. At the end.
Yeah. And so then you're like, well, the worst hadn't even come yet. The worst was still to come. As I now, again, resist this even more, I push back and I push back and I push back, and it comes harder and harder and harder. And I have to choose something greater. I have to choose. And that's the idea of ownership, I think, was so neat too. I have to take ownership of who I am, of my life, of my goals, of my dreams. Nobody's going to make them happen for me, but I have the ability now to make them happen. And look, I actually made it happen. Here we are, 2022, and I'm living my dream life.
Yeah.
So I hear this story, again, pick whatever words you want, but I hear this story almost from resistance to ownership.
Yeah.
And through it required courage, required consistency, required identity formation. in an environment that
Yeah.
simply wasn't offering it for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that sound authentic?
Yeah.
Does that sound like you?
Yeah.
So I think
I love how the environment that simply wasn't offering it for you. That's good.
because I think that's the invitation now, right? Is for anybody listening to this that finds themselves in a similar situation of maybe not to that extreme, but in some way they feel like their dreams are being pushed back against and nobody's helping them. Nobody's going to do this for them.
Yep.
To break them out of whatever they're in or help them drive forwards. There is this level of ownership that they are looking for, longing for, that they see and hear in your voice now, Becca.
Yes.
If they find themselves there and want to be here, what's the best way to start a conversation with you to explore what that looks like?
Yes, the best way to start a conversation with me is find me on Instagram or Facebook. And Instagram, I have a link to my website, and just feel free to either shoot me a message there or shoot me a message through my website. And I would be honored to hear where you're at and see if I can help you. See if you can help yourself.
Look at that. I am so grateful for this, for you opening this up and sharing your vulnerable story with us, for knowing that it's important, that people will find themselves in it. And, you know, as I said earlier, just to hear your heart through all of this and how it's been there all along. And it's like you're recognizing and realizing this calling and the possibility here. It's not only encouraging and exhilarating to be a part of this on this end, but it's truly an honor and a privilege to have you on the show and to hear this story and be, you know, what feels like at the beginning of this journey with you.
Yeah, you are.
And I'm just celebrating, and I'm so excited for where you're going from here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute honor.
It's good.